Right. Well, we get started. Right, as I said, you're all very welcome to today's webinar. My name is Conor Love. I'm the market manager here at LoweConex, and I'm delighted to be joined by Julie Sheldon and Ian Smithyman. So today we'll be discussing driving carbon and energy savings through asset optimisation, and we're joined today by the Midcounties Co-operative. So they'll be discussing through how they've optimised HVAC and refrigeration assets within their stores, in turn driving energy savings throughout the estate. So just a brief agenda for today before we get stuck into it. So first we'll just do some introductions. We'll talk then around refrigeration and HVAC challenges, specifically within retail estates. Julie's then going to bring us through the Midcounties Cooperative tech journey, and then we'll talk a bit around a recipe for success for retailers and what that really looks like in these contexts. We'll then go through the Midcounties objectives and then what learnings we at LoweConex were able to bring to this project. Finally, looking at the impact to date and then what's next, a bit of innovation, what the Midcounties are planning next in this space, and what the future holds for their journey. So before we get stuck into it, we'll just do a bit of a brief intro. So Julie, do you want to start off there?
Yeah, thanks, Conor. Afternoon, all. Thank you for joining us. Julie Sheldon. I'm here representing MCC, Midcounties Co-op, as head of energy efficiency. I've been here many years, but in different guises. So certainly my journey to get to head of energy efficiency has always been operations to start with. So in site operations, so very key with regards to what we're going to discuss today from a coalface point of view, and then certainly moving into our property group and then now into head of energy efficiency, which very much align with each other and work well together to make sure that we are driving energy efficiency. Thanks, Conor.
Yeah. And then Ian, do you want to give an intro to yourself as well?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Ian Smithyman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at LoweConex. I've been with the business now for just over 2 years, and I've got about 30-ish years in retail, facilities and prop tech experience. And I'll be discussing some of the tips around how we would do this with other clients and how we did this with Midcounties and how that's been successful and the recipes for success, as Colin has quite rightly said.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. So we'll just get straight into it, into the questions. So before we get into a wider discussion around Midcounties and the project that you have rolled out, I think it's important for us to set a bit of context to the conversation. So do both of you really, like, what challenges exist within retail when it comes to managing these assets, specifically refrigeration and HVAC, and aiming to achieve energy consumption savings through optimizing those assets? So could you just give me a bit of a discussion around that?
I'll let you go first, Julie, because normally I speak first and then you don't get a word in. So if you go first, then that should help.
Yes. Yes, everybody learn from that one. Yes. So yeah, thanks, Ian. Look, for those people who've clearly joined the webinar and are interested, I would hope in this. So we are aware of the challenges around refrigeration and HVAC management, not only from a cost perspective, first and foremost, and the fact of how much energy they do use as a percentage across retail sites and other, other areas of business. So not only is the cost, but clearly there's the maintenance, there's the replacement of it. Quite simply from an operational point of view, purely because of the length that they run and the time. Food sites, other sites, they trade for a long time. Then we obviously moving on from a compliance point of view. We need to be compliant. We need to be making sure that food safety is at the foremost of things that we do. And of course, from a challenge point of view, you are reliant on the sites making sure that they are compliant. So whatever we can do to ease that for them, it's important that we look at what we can do to move forward, or making sure those challenges are addressed in the best way possible. So we want to make sure we're supporting the sites to be compliant, to make sure they're not as task focused around the compliance element. From an operational point of view, making sure they're running as efficiently and as effectively as possible. As I've said and I've mentioned, the fact that they are running all of the time that we are trading and overnight, but they need to have good housekeeping for them at the coalface, which means hopefully fewer breakdowns, which means less food waste, which again for those retailers on the call will know that's a big objective and a big challenge for us. And then from a maintenance point of view, having a robust maintenance program in place, often it's reliable. The repairs, the constant wear and tear on this equipment, and as I mentioned, good housekeeping. And for me, I mean, obviously, Connell, this particular slide, it's making sure all those four are balanced. For us, so we can, we face into those challenges that we have as businesses. So yeah, that's from our perspective.
Yeah, and I guess.
And I think, sorry, Connell, I'll just add to that. Operational challenges that you face in retail estates is normally they're quite vast in terms of their size. So it's quite a geographical spread of area. It's quite a number of sites, quite a number of assets, and trying to manage all of those to deliver compliance or deliver energy or deliver maintenance is always very, very difficult. If everybody only ever had one site, it's relatively straightforward because you can touch and feel that every day. But actually with Midcounties, what we found is you've got 220 of those sites, and it's more difficult. And of course, the ever-changing environments that we're currently facing, whether that's an economical environment or whether that's a physical environment outside, temperature and so on and so forth, colleague and customer comfort is also a challenge to manage at scale. So again, a site-by-site basis, like if you're at home and you turn the heating up when you're feeling cold or you turn it down when you're feeling warm, that's relatively straightforward. But how does Julie and her team manage that across 220 stores? Because the danger is that they control their own. So the challenge of trying to maintain a set policy across 220 sites is quite a difficult one.
Yeah, and it's even there like that. That's really interesting, Ian, because even with like bringing that energy mix into it, where you're trying to fight these new challenges now, with like net zero, like energy reduction, energy costs going up, and that instability that we've seen in the markets, it probably makes that does make that compliance and maintenance challenge even harder now that energy mix is such a bigger piece of the puzzle. So thanks guys, it's really interesting just to set that scene, I guess, and start off the discussion in that way. I guess understanding those challenges then, do you, Julie, could you tell us a bit then about how Midcounties have introduced tech over the years, and how you've used tech really to support the property team to kind of navigate some of those complexities?
Yeah, of course. And it goes without saying, the property team here have been, a part of that tech journey, and clearly at some point I was part of that tech journey from a property perspective as well. I mean, just going back to the fact as well, whilst Ian, you talked about the 220 sites, whilst we are investing in our business, there is an element of an aged estate. So when we talk about technology, clearly you're looking at being forward thinking and making sure you are investing in the technology as well as the equipment. So previously, there's been a heavy reliance on the people and the sites to make sure that, the checks are being done, which could have been manual checks at some point, as part of the start of the journey, to make sure we are doing the same, abiding by the law with regards to food safety, which has clearly added additional task for the sites. And of course, it's added time, and you've got to be. There was an element of we wanted to be proactive as part of the tech journey. So, at the beginning, very heavily reliant on people, and I'm sure again some of the retailers on the call and other businesses will realise that you are reliant on your colleagues at that coalface to do what they need to do. Then we've obviously got the relationship they have with your refrigeration contractor or your hard services contractor. We were reliant on those to make sure that the sites were being maintained as part of the contract. They were visiting, they were, doing the service calls, they were reacting to any calls that we had. But of course, if we hadn't got the tech as part of the journey way back then, this was a phone call, this was very manual, this was very cumbersome for the sites then to get serviced, repaired, whatever that looked like. But as we progressed, we invested, and we've invested heavily within new refrigeration within our food sites. We fitted what is called the RDM, so the remote data manager, which again, I'm sure that's language on the call people will understand and appreciate. So then we started to see a greater level of control. So the sites would alarm if there was a temperature breach, which again we could focus on. So we could limit any breakdowns. There'd be the contractor then could react. Did they need to visit? But it still wasn't where it needed to be, because of course, could we stop those engineer visits? Was it as simple as the freezer door's been left open and that's why the alarm's going off? These were very what I would deem today a very simple thing, but this was the life we were living. This is what we were dealing with, whether that be from a property point of view, a tech point of view, or certainly an operational point of view. So of course, we realised that we had this lack of this central visibility for the sites. So with that, we could clearly have, a clear view of all the sites. Not only had got these RDMs, but the rest of the estate, what's the possibility there? Because not all sites had this RDM at this point in time. And again, it was unreliable. There was a lack of data. Could we have history? So then we could make good business decisions. So it was, as it states there, it was fragmented from a centralisation point of view. But we started a journey. There was a journey, and again, I'm sure some of you on the call have been on that journey too. So that's what our tech journey looked like before we obviously started in the partnership with LoweConex.
Yeah. And I guess what you said, there's probably that resonation where probably is a lot of people on the call that can relate with that journey and getting to that point where, yes, they have a bit of control and connectivity across the estate, but it doesn't really give that visibility, that level of analytics and control, and that historic data that allows you to make those informed decisions that you've touched on there, which is really, really critical, especially navigating those challenges we discussed earlier. I guess then, Ian, and I don't want to say that there is one, but perhaps there is, and you can give us a bit of a foresight to that. But what is the recipe for success for retailers? Like, obviously, you've worked in controls, you've worked in many large retailers across the years. Throughout that career, what is the success look like when it comes to asset optimization?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, Connell. And I know when we were chatting through this before, when we were prepping for this, I don't think there is a recipe for success, right? So I'm not saying I could write something down, because what I think is that everybody's different, right? And everybody's instance of their estate is different, and everybody's at a slightly different place on that journey, right? So, but I would say that there's some key components of what you would think would be helpful in doing this, right? So, look, the first and foremost is open-minded to change. So, Julie would chuckle about this, but we started talking many years ago around the journey that we were going to go on with Midcounties, and we presented back some information, and Midcounties took a decision to perhaps try something manually to start with. And then when we went back and we evaluated the situation with Julie about 6 months later and said, well, we know you did it all manually, but there was lots that you could have done that you didn't. So but they were open-minded to the change. They were open-minded to us doing things slightly differently, being a bit out there. So I think it's really important that the customer has to come into this in the right mindset, because we're going to suggest things that probably are not standard, right? And that leads me nicely on to my next point around challenging the status quo, because when you talk about this, if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got, right? And that would have been very easy for Midcounties. So they had, as Julie quite rightly said on the last slide, had made a massive investment in a technology solution, a control solution that is, industry, as good as it gets in the industry, but weren't doing an awful lot with it. And I hope you don't mind me saying that, Julie. So we were challenging the status quo and how they were doing it, how they could do it differently. And that sort of then takes you on to, Julie knew what she wanted, right, from a Midcounties point of view, so understanding what the outcome needed to be, but didn't necessarily understand how to piece all those things together. So Julie could tell me that actually I want the team never to go and service an alarm from a store point of view. When I send an engineer to site, it has to be valuable. When I'm making decisions around what I do around comfort policy in stores or temperature policy in stores, it has to have all those 4 component parts that we talked about: maintenance and energy, right, and operational benefit and all that. So Julie knew what she wanted. She just didn't know how to get there. So we kind of said, right, okay, that's really good, but taking some time to know what you want is really, really important. And then probably the most important in all that, right, is that everybody talks in this industry about an enterprise-led strategy, enterprise-led sale, enterprise-led platform that does everything for you and will standardize your whole estate. It's true, but not, right? In the fact that not one size does fit all. And Julie will tell you now that we set a policy that said, right, if it goes below 19 degrees in a store, we're going to heat it. If it goes above 25 degrees in a store, we're going to cool it. And we gave it a bit of a sort of dead band in the middle. But then what we quickly realised in the stores that we're connected to, we've probably got about 20 different schedules, Connell, because we have to evaluate each store, its condition, its location, and the people within the store. So some people will feel the cold more than others, some feel the warmth. Heaven forbid we get a store where we've got those 2 individuals together, because that's slightly more tricky. But we have had numerous conversations with Julie and her colleagues and the store colleagues in particular to build out schedules that fit the environment that store is in, alongside making sure we're doing the right thing for Julie from an energy saving perspective. So I think if I just summarise, being open to change, challenging what you've always done, understanding what you want, and remember, as much as you want it to be one size fits all, it's definitely never going to be that in a retail environment or even a hospitality environment or even a big building environment. They're all different.
Yeah. It all seems very mentality oriented. So it's just coming at it, I guess, from that right attitude, but knowing from the get-go what it is that you're setting out to achieve. So whenever you implement some sort of strategy or action, you can really measure back and make sure it's accountable and has the impact.
Yeah, I think for me, Connell, right, what I didn't want to do, and I was very conscious of, is blinding Julie with a load of science around computers and mathematics and algorithms and all those kind of things, right? Because that's my job as LoweConex, or our job as LoweConex, to make sure that we plug all that in, listening to what Julie tells me. So, I think we had a few meetings, Julie, where I listened and talked, they told me everything that was wrong. And then it's very easy for us to piece that together from a LoweConex perspective. But you're absolutely right. It is the culture change that has been probably the most challenging for us, Julie and I, in terms of Midcounties, because the rest of it was relatively straightforward once Julie told me what she wanted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll not get any spoilers. We'll go on to what Julie set out to achieve. So, Julie, do you want to talk around really what were your key objectives? And I know it's kind of on the screen there, but if you want to talk around what was it that you set out to achieve, and really as a result of that, what was it that you realized you could achieve, I guess, from the action with LoweConex?
Okay, so this was probably the one of the great or the biggest insight really that we had. So there's no shame with me saying on this phone call, our biggest objective when we set out to do this was we needed to save money. Simple as. Again, everybody on this call, energy was crippling the businesses because of the cost of it, and we'll appreciate it's now leveled out, but we needed to save money. That was ultimately the objective. But of course, what we got was so much more, and we are getting so much more. And a term we'd all know, the added value element of it, which again was when we talked about it was no big and great surprise. It's actually, that makes sense. We talked about the fact that yes, you need to save money, or we want to save money, but alongside all that, if we can optimize, if we can have your estate connected, you are going to get this. So your compliance is going to improve. It's up there. So we'll take an element of risk away, quite quite a large element of risk away, because we would know what the temperatures are, having set them, after having standardized them, we would know. So the food safety checks, would be, the sites and the resource would be less pressure on them. So there was one thing, not only over here are we saving money, great. Then from a maintenance point of view, we'd have a greater insight on actually how many breakdowns are we getting, which sites are they, how often is it, is there a particular reason? Yes, okay, you can always say, oh, it's an aged estate or the site, but was there something obvious with particular sites, which we started to see through the data we were getting, after we'd started optimizing and standardizing the sites. And whilst we're a co-op and we are driving for that net zero, same as other businesses, but if we're saving energy, saving money, we're also looking at our reduction in carbon, our profitability. So it's significant with regards to this is lowering our greenhouse gases within our stores. So that then, in turn reduces our carbon impact on this planet, which again is a huge benefit for us to support that. And then the people, they have embraced this change where we've done this. They, the culture, the behaviour there. We've talked about, briefly the comfort policy around the HVAC. And Ian's quite right. We've had to look at each site differently because, we're all different. Colleagues, all colleagues, they like it a little warmer, they like it a little cooler. Again, is there full sunlight on the site? That impacted from a HVAC point of view. But the colleagues have embraced the change and they've seen the benefits of that, not only, again, from a cost point of view, but the added value, as I keep calling it. So they are on board and they've thought, oh, actually, yes, coming in and whacking the air conditioning up, all the heating up in the winter, and then you've got the fridge doing overtime. They were just clashing. They were like symbols previously, but now they understand. Working with LoweConex, not only have we had all this data, through this, but supporting with communications, briefings for the teams. So they've got clarity on the reason why are we doing this, and this is what it means to you, and they've seen the evidence of that. And again, operationally, streamlining the multiple processes or the challenge that we had. Yes, there's some individual challenges in some branches, as Ian said. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than it was. We've got visibility of all these sites that we didn't have before, and it's operationally, it's helped and supported the sites to detask them. It's also helped them to focus, thinking, actually, yeah, I know that's being looked after, I know that's being looked at. And again, fridge breakdowns, reduction in those, so that we can highlight it. No need for an engineer, so we haven't got the cost for that. So additional cost there. So all in all, this, again, as saying within the business, is the low-hanging fruit. Not only, yes, this low-hanging fruit of saving money, we had all this extra elements when we obviously partnered with LoweConex, which just means we are, we're doing great things together to improve what we have within the society, within MCC, from a refrigeration and HVAC management point of view.
Yeah, I find the most interesting one there for me is probably that people and cultural change.
Yeah.
And really, like, in this space, to have an initiative come in that focuses on energy and net zero, but actually brings it to that level where people get so bought into it that it changes minds and changes thoughts and processes around how things work. It's obviously had such a big impact for you as a company culturally to make that shift.
It has, and I know LoweConex are. I know Ian's on the call, and I'm sure there might be a few other people on the call. But don't tell them. But the fact that they considered our colleagues, our customers, our members as well as it wasn't just about, oh yeah, we need to get you optimized, we need to get you standardized. It wasn't just that. There was that element of it that was important to us as a co-op and an MCC. The people are our biggest asset, so we needed to bring them on the journey with us.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I wanted to interrupt a couple of seconds ago, Connell, but I'm conscious that there's lots of people listening, so I didn't want to be overly. But I think it all helps, right? So right from day one, I think the most important thing for all of us has been around how do we communicate the change to those colleagues, and then they embrace the change. So it's actually been a very receptacle relationship, right from our bureau point of view through to Julie's store teams. And then, from Julie and I, so that the conversation that Julie started at the very early doors around the communication back into stores has led to, when they contact the bureau for whatever reason that might be, to a very reciprocal relationship. So I think, we talked about recipe for success previously. The one thing I would say is talk about this openly, talk about why. Right now, Julie said it was all to save money, but there's a whole load of other benefits that people can perhaps build upon, because it's not all about cash. So I think communication is going to be key to this, and telling people what's going on, because I think Midcounties team fully have really understood it. For the maintenance team, that I know some of them are on this call today, through to the store colleagues, through to the Julie's team in sustainability, through to the exec, the C-suite, everybody's embraced the change, and that's come from the great communication.
Brilliant. So to move on, Ian, I guess that's a relevant segue here. I guess moving into this estate, what experience were we maybe able to bring from other clients and other projects that we've worked on into Midcounties? So I know that within retail, some of these stores are quite similar. So was there anything that we were able to implement that helped that process roll out?
Yeah, so look, I guess this isn't just about the previous experience here, Connell. Right, for me, this is, I've got 32 years ish of doing things not quite right. So I've got probably 32 years of experience to build upon, plus what I'm grateful for with my other customers, where we've probably tested some of these theories and methodologies and so on and so forth. So you always take the stuff that you do really well and try and repeat that, right? So those of you that know LoweConex will know that we started off working with TCG, which is the co-op group of Manchester. So it was a like-for-like estate, really, in terms of what the team at Midcounties versus that co-op. It was very, very similar, very similar ethos. So we looked at what did we do well there, what could we bring in. So actually, they would probably argue they were the guinea pigs back in 2016-17, Connell, whereas Julie wasn't the guinea pig because they'd already done it. I think also the waterfall approach, right? So this stuff can be quite daunting if you've never done it before, right? And when people start to talk about AI and machine learning and all the other great buzzwords that surround this space, right, people often get worried, nervous, and I was very conscious that when we spoke to Midcounties, we were talking about connectivity, we were talking about operational change, we were talking about culture. So it's that waterfall approach. And look, we'll talk a little bit about what's next for Midcounties, but we couldn't do the what's next until we put the foundations in. So rather than try and boil the ocean in one go or eat the elephant or whatever other phrase you want to use, we started really, really small, and we'll build on success. So actually we'll continue to evolve together. I think working in partnership, Julie mentioned the word, and I think we've probably undersold it here, right? This hasn't been LoweConex telling Midcounties what to do, or Midcounties telling the LoweConex what to do. This has been very much a partnership. This has been very much at every stage of the evolution. There's a conversation, there's a point in time. If we've got something important to tell Julie, or something that we think she might need to know, or equally the other way around, then we've had a conversation about it. Look, and everything we've said so far has been really, really positive, and we've had a great experience. And the truth is that there's been times when we've not had that great experience. We've had to have those conversations, but it's been a partnership approach, because sometimes people miss something or forget something wrong, and that's actually fine. So I think working in partnerships, working with previous partners that we have before, and bringing those along to Julie and the team, and working with previous customers to be the reference point to that, that's also been really helpful. And then probably look, and Julie mentioned it, there is a number of my colleagues on this call, right, that have got industry expertise, right? I'm blessed by my operations team have got over 100 years of experience in this space combined. So they bring all of those learnings. I talked about 32 years of making probably little mistakes along the way. They equally have those things, but they equally have all the great stuff that they've done across various different industries against various different. They can bring all of that as well. So I think, that was useful for us, and we continue to evolve, and we're not siloed enough, to think that we're the best at this, because we're not. There's a big old wide world out there, but we have brought industry experts in. We've brought different people from different industries, which also helped the implementation of the LoweConex MCC rollout.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that point around the waterfall approach as well. Linking that back to what we were discussing earlier around the status quo and kind of challenging things that aren't normal. I guess having that waterfall, like step-by-step approach and kind of easing into it, it makes it that bit easier as well to understand what it is, firstly, that we're actually able to do together, but actually measure it bit by bit as we go and identify those learnings throughout. So it makes that disrupting the status quo maybe a bit easier, because you're not, as you say, biting it all off once and taking too much off. Yeah, really good.
And also, Connell, right? What we did, we were very conscious that we focused on the right things early doors, because that waterfall approach becomes a lot easier if you can deliver a big transitional change at the very, very start. That makes everything else a lot smarter.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess then, looking at the impact, Julie, what impact has the LoweConex project had to date, and how do you measure the success around that?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you would have hopefully gathered within the call that we've certainly seen vast improvements, and as we agreed we would. So our onboarding was February to July, as you can see from the slide. So we've seen a daily saving per site on the connected sites that we've got of just over 16 kilowatt hours, and just short for the total savings to date of 500,000 kilowatt hours, which in itself gives us an energy cost reduction of just short of £151,000, which is huge for our business, and clearly it'd be relative for other businesses, I'm sure. But again, yes, we set out, and the main objective was save money and kilowatt hours, which meant we saved energy. But there's much more now, as we've said, with this waterfall approach and the low-hanging fruit. So, we've now got this remote control and standardisation across the refrigeration, with 120 of them connected, which means we've got just short of 1,800 refrigeration assets connected, which we've never heard of prior. It was prior to us agreeing and joining into this partnership. So the Bureau and great support from the Bureau with regards to looking at the settings, the optimizations, so changing the settings across these sites, which as you can see from the slide, there's 26 where control parameters have got set points, 50% alarm bandings for compliance, and we've touched on compliance throughout this presentation and this webinar, purely because it is very important that we are adhering to food safety. And then 24% admin related, such as naming conventions. I mean, we had some very strange names out there, which again, a colleague at LoweConex has made sure that they are all aligned and make more sense. Again, we've touched on the food safety element. We're now protected in the sites that the changes have been made in. Great for that. Locked all the settings to stop unauthorised changes by the engineers, and that's no disrespect to our contractors or the engineers, but no, they can't go in and just change things. It's managed, it's controlled, so we have a process that they have to make sure that they follow. Capturing the project type in every case, and again, if we have any merchandising changes or range changes, then again, back to communication with LoweConex, we're letting them know throughout when we do any big changes like that. Aligning the HVAC for energy efficiency, again, back to the communication element, having a comfort policy, working together around that, ensuring, as I've mentioned, the customers, the members and the colleagues, that their needs are prioritised. So they are allowed to put their HVAC on, of course they are, but they were within controlled set points. And again, if there's an issue, they just make us aware, and we address that within the trading hours. And probably a great example of that, the control that we had, was Ian and the team realised that we were, which I'm sure some other retailers did, we shut early on the Sunday of the Euros. I'm not a football expert here, so yeah, I'm sure it was the Euros, wasn't it, Ian?
It was the final, but we don't want to talk about the final because we didn't win.
No, so we don't. I know we don't. But the point I'm making is, because we closed early, straight away, LoweConex were on that, and lights were switched off, refrigeration, beers, wines and spirits, which is what we've agreed at certain times, were switched off. So a very basic thing, but we were able to do that just like we were switching a switch off, which we wouldn't have been able to do without this automation that we now have within those sites. So, you know, putting it, you know, the question obviously, Connell, being, you know, what are the measures, you know, what have we seen, what are the outputs? Well, this is it, and we continue to see that without discussing or talking about what's next for us.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at the outputs there, because if we go back to like the challenges we discussed at the start, and that energy angle comes in at the start, which we said was such a rising challenge, but everything else that's done there, it really helps you with that compliance element. You've got standardization there with your data, standardized control, and then across the board as well, having visibility of assets, performance. It maintains that maintenance aspect too. It kind of touches all those challenges and those points that we've raised at the beginning, which is great. I guess there you said, oh, Squanian, sorry.
No, sorry, Connell. You know, once you've got me started, I'm never going to stop. Right, sorry. Right, what? Don't laugh, Julie. It's not funny. So yeah, there's loads of stuff around those. Right. So when people see the word admin, right, they relate to those being minor changes, right? And they were minor changes, but what it allowed us to do is set the foundations for the future. So what we've identified is when, you know, one of the changes is just around renaming the cold room door. So when the cold room door is left open, we can now see that the cold room door is left open rather than it being grouped as a refrigeration alarm, which wasn't very helpful. That will further allow us to automate the process for Julie and her team at Midcounties, because we'll now be able to identify when those cold room doors are left open. We'll now be able to identify how we can save more money, and we can report when those cold room doors are left open, what the impact that has on energy, which allows Julie to go back and do that culture piece again. So the first two were obviously the most important because they were around compliance, but don't underestimate just solving the basics of getting the data right, because that's really important. And I know Julie said a colleague at LoweConex, but I want to call him out because I think he did a great piece of work. But Paul, Stacey and the team really went through this and through this. I think we had about 15 different iterations of what that was going to look like, because we didn't get it right the first time. So it's just worth noting that it's been a constant evolution, even in a very short space of time.
Yeah, and I guess it's that commitment, taking something that's complex and making it that bit simpler, and the commitment to keep trying. Right. So I guess we've kind of touched on it there and led into it, but in terms of opportunities and innovation on both sides, like for Midcounties within your tech rollout and the strategies you're implementing, but also Ian within LoweConex and the tech that we're producing, what's next? So Julie, I think we're going to come to you first, just to talk about Midcounties and what your optimization strategy is going to look like in the future.
Okay, thanks, Connell. So, and I'm glad. Sorry, Ian, you did name well, and certainly it's Shane, but name Paul. Yeah, very, very much so. So, certainly our next steps, we're looking. You've obviously heard me say this. This is across 50% of our sites, 120 of our sites. We've got 220 sites. So we are looking at doing the remainder of the estate. So that's going to be very interesting. So we want to obviously continue to drive our cost savings and our energy efficiency around that. So of course, it makes sense that we look at the remainder of our food estate, our retail estate, for sure. So that's certainly on the radar, and something that we're working very closely with Ian on. It is now going to be part of our specification for any new sites that we have. So any refits, any new sites that we have, we'll ensure that we install LoweConex at that point as well. So that'll be part of that project. So that's, that's encouraging and very welcoming, certainly from an MCC point of view. So, we're looking forwards rather than backwards, and then, going back to fit the LoweConex. So that's part of the spec, that's part of the strategy. So brilliant. We want to see what else the IoT can do, so the Internet of Things. So I have to say that's my every day is a school day, because I never knew what IoT meant until we obviously started this journey. So it's a great word, isn't it? IoT, Internet of Things. So the LoweConex, it can do so much more. So what else can we plug in? Not just the refrigeration or the HVAC. What else, like our bakery ovens in the sites, lighting, what more can we do? Because it doesn't stop there. And again, going back to that tech journey, there is more to go after. So that's what's quite exciting about this project. It's not just going to end here. It's what's next. It's what are we going to be doing over the next few years to optimize this opportunity that we've got. So yeah, that's good. And again, just to continue, keep the momentum going within the sites, because this is, it's been quite, well, not quite, this has been very exciting for us. And yeah, working with the LoweConex team, it's been a very interesting and rewarding, because of course we're seeing the results within the business. So it's always good within the business to have a good news story, and this has been a very good news story for us. We set out to do X, we have done X, but actually we've also got Y too, with additional things. So that's been that's been. And again, let's put some perspective on this. It's not just me. There's been a whole host of people within EMCC supporting to deliver this. And again, I'm sure some of my colleagues are on the call too. So, a big shout out to all those people, whether they be in LoweConex or MCC. So I'm just the lucky person who got invited to this webinar to talk about it. Yeah, so it's just making sure we keep moving forward with regards to this optimization, and what more we can do with all aspects of, whether that be the compliance, the maintenance, the informed business decisions that we need to make with the data. As I've said, there is so much more that we can do. This is just, we've started, we've iced the cake. We need to, what else underneath can we look at?
Tip of the iceberg.
And sorry, and ultimately, yes, we've saved energy, yes, we've saved money, and we are reducing our carbon impact. So win-win. Yeah,
super exciting stuff. I guess, Ian, then as we're talking around Midcounties there, what are we doing in our team to develop that and really provide Midcounties with the latest innovations in tech to support their journey even further?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go in the order on the screen, unfortunately, Connell, because we've already started the journey. So in 26 of the stores now, we've currently deployed dynamic control. So what that means to those people that don't understand some of the buzzwords that would exist is that the refrigeration and the HVAC now will react to the conditions both externally and internally to the store without intervention of a human. So behind the scenes, the system is automatically looking to update itself on the performance, right? Both from a HVAC point of view, so AC point of view, and also a refrigeration perspective, right? So it's already starting to think about that. Now, some would argue, maybe not me, because I'm not that way inclined at the moment, but that is really around machine learning and AI, and those things are starting to already creep into some of the stuff that we're doing. We probably don't describe those quite in that way to Julie, because we said we wouldn't do that too early in the process, but we felt there was an opportunity. And 26 of Julie's sites where we could deploy that relatively straightforwardly, relatively simply. So that will allow us to then build in our, automatic intelligence and machine learning journey into Co-op, and looking at all the data that they've got coming through and how we can make the system better, smarter, and make better decisions for the customer. And we've already started to see some of these things, right? So we already know that some of Julie's stores hold their temperature in the day. So we don't need to enact the system to do heating. We know that some of those hold their cooler temperatures because they're open door refrigeration cases. Therefore, we don't need to put cooling into those stores. So we're already starting to do that. We've developed, and we are going to build this out with Julie, but it's an automated measurement and verification tool. So what that means is that when we're tracking these savings, we've built a tool that's automated and it's pulling these savings. And those of you that understand that measurement and verification, sometimes that's a monthly process that's taken care of. The tool that we've built actually will do that weekly. We will allow Julie to do that, so Julie can assess our results for herself using an automated tool, which will just mean that, first of all, she'll be one step ahead of me in terms of the performance. And secondly, it just means that it's not an onerous process anymore. And it allows us to be a lot more driven around those savings numbers, Connell, because normally what we do is we get to the end of the month, we then look back on what we've done. What we can now do is get to the end of the week and look back on what we've done, so we can react to change much quicker. And then probably the last one, and if Ben and Kirsty are on the call, that we'll start to talk about asset performance score. An asset performance score will allow Midcounties to be slightly more thoughtful about how they do maintenance, right? So does everything need a PPM twice a year, every year? Don't know. Some of the data that we are looking at would suggest not. Therefore, can we be a bit smarter on how we do that with Kirsty and the refrigeration contractors? So they Midcounties only pay for what they need rather than pay for what they think they might need. So I think there's going to be some stuff that we do over the next look, and this isn't a short journey, and Julie are great pains to keep talking about it. This is something that probably takes 12 to 18 months to get done properly. So all the things we're talking about here, it's not going to happen next Tuesday. If Kirsty and Ben are on the call, I think I need to reiterate that point, but it will happen at some point. And the quicker we get the data, the quicker we can move through this, and the quicker Midcounties adopt some of these thinking styles, the easier it will be to implement. And I know Kirsty, Ben, and Julie have been really engaged in some of the stuff we've done. So this will be a relatively short journey, but still takes time to do properly, because you do need to go through, I was going to say the 4 seasons. I'm not sure there is 4 anymore in this country. It's normally just winter, isn't it? But winter and wet. So we'll just, there is a little bit of help that we need around that. But they're the next few things that we'll be looking at for Midcounties for sure.
Nice. Well,